folks, with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the Crumbley case, Crumbley case in the United States. I think it's in the state of Michigan. Now, what's just happened is the mother has been convicted, I think they call it of indirect or involuntary manslaughter. I'll just give you a quick overview here. The son, who I think was about 14, went into his high school and shut up the high school, and some students died as a result of the gunfire, and others were injured as a consequence of the gunfire. So obviously unpleasant and extremely unfortunate, and so on. Now the kid's white, parents are white, so lower working class, struggling to get by, and this sort of thing. They're not rich people or sophisticated people, far from it. They bought some cheap gun at some gun store because they wanted to teach the son to use, go to a shooting club or a shooting range, and they bought it as a gift for I don't know, something or other, for the kid. And no big deal, no great shakes. It's a dysfunctional family. The kid's not coping too well with teenage life, and ends up taking the gun to school. Now the kid's being charged as an adult, and I don't agree with that, but let's come back to that in a minute. What's unusual here is the state, the prosecutor, decided to charge the parents and say, well, really, it's your fault. Now the argument was, well, you bought him the gun. You took him to the shooting range to the gun club to learn to shoot, and you didn't have the gun secured in a proper secure strong box or something like that is prescribed. So because you didn't do those things, and because you thought he might have been behaving a bit strangely because you didn't do anything, really it's your fault. Now, not directly your fault. I mean, you didn't pull the trigger or something, but given that combination, you should have known or should not have done those things, or should have done something differently. So somehow it's your fault. Now that's of course a bit of a stretch. The prosecutor managed to get a guilty verdict on the woman. Now the woman's hardly an object of pity. She's, as far as I can see at least, got an unpleasant, rather brutish demeanour, and lower working class, white, angry. Life hasn't been kind. This sort of thing. And but does that make her guilty of anything? Well, no. She's one of tens of millions of parents who are in that situation all across the Western world. Does that make them guilty of anything? Is it a dysfunctional family? I mean, can you convict people for that? So the prosecutors, as I understand it, or certainly in my opinion, is an activist. They're in a state where Michigan, where the number of murders and homicides is off the charts, committed primarily, like 70% of them from black and brown people. I think more than that from black and brown people are committing these murders, and also multiple murders, such as drug gangs having shootouts in the street and this sort of thing. Especially in places like the big cities and so on. Nonetheless, the activist, in my opinion, the activist prosecutor who manages to secure an activist judge to hear the case. So that's an interesting combination. It suggests premeditation here, but that's only my view. So they dragged the mother and father too. I think the case is yet to occur for the father. Drag the mother into court and say, well, you're guilty because you bought the gun. And her argument is, well, I didn't buy him the gun, the father did. I didn't teach him to shoot, the father did. But you should have known. You should have known. So anyway, the activist prosecutor. So you're the prosecutor in a state where murders are off the charts, committed principally by black and brown people. Not many white people are committing murder in the state, but so it arrives on your desk. You're the prosecutor, and it's a high-profile case, and so okay, what do we got here? This is the prosecutor. This is the meeting they're having about whether to prosecute or not. Okay, what do we got here? The kid. Is he straight and white? He's not trans or gay or lesbian. No, straight white male. Okay, perfect, good. Okay, tick, tick, tick. What about the parents? Straight, mother's straight. They're both white. Oh, tick, 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 tick. Are they Christians? Yeah, a little bit of associated. Tick. Do you think they're Trump voters? Yep. Tick. All right then. So this is perfect. Let's go and get these guys, and let's see if we can make this one stick. But what about we got a guy who in the inner city there, they're having a shootout, and he shot 3 people, or 10 people, 3 of them died. Well, let's have the cutoff point for mass shooting at 4, so that we can then ignore that one that he shot 3, because the other 7, the other 10 survived their things. So, well, and he's black, isn't he? Yeah, okay. Well, no, we don't. No, we don't want that one. We're talking about restorative justice here. Okay, we just want to send a message to those damn fucking straight white Nazis that we're watching them. We're watching them, and your kid doesn't think we're going to come after you. So I don't know. Did it go like that? I don't know that it did or that it didn't. But it's a strange case to prosecute, because there are. In the average over the last sort of so many years in the US has been approximately 25,000 homicides a year. Now, it's difficult when you look at the numbers there, because what they classify as homicide, they bounce it around into different categories. So you kind of have to tease out the numbers. And when I looked at them, I thought, I'm going to have to sit down and do some heavyweight number crunching here. I just didn't want to put the time into it. But 25,000 a year will be, certainly indicative of the amount of homicides. Now, again, that doesn't include ones that they knock down to manslaughter and plea deals, because there's tens and tens of thousands of those. But let's take the homicides. Now, of the homicides, like the black and brown people are committing about 70% of the homicide, more in the states that have got a high ratio of inner city black populations and drug gangs and so on. So if you were going to prosecute shootings, and the parents of people that do the shootings, there'd be an awful lot of black and brown people being dragged in through the courts. Now, it may be a little bit more difficult to maybe get hold of the father in some of these places, but if you look at just is this the new baseline? Your son or daughter or child commits a crime, a murder, for example, then we're going to come after you. Now, if you look at the amount of murders each year and the number of them that are committed by black people, that means 23 to 27,000 black people will be thrown in prison each year for the crimes committed by their children. Now, and how far do you go on that? Do you include only murder, or do you include, say someone who got bashed so severely that they're paraplegic, or something? Like how far, or quadriplegic? How far do you go down this rabbit hole? So, if this is now a new baseline, then why is it that only a working class white family got selected to set this precedent, given there are very few of these white families that would set the precedent? Why? And if it's, it's only a mass shooting. Okay, all right. Well, let's have a look at all the black mass shooters. Let's have a look at the trans mass shooters or mass shooters. What about that trans girl that shot up the that Christian high school? Why aren't her parents in prison? Why is it just this white working class family that's been selected? Because they're not specially, they didn't encourage him to do this or help him do it or aid or abet him in any way. They're arguing, well, you shouldn't have bought him the gun. You shouldn't have taken him to the shooting range. You should have, secured the gun or hidden it more effectively, because they hid it somewhere in the house, and the gun and somehow he found it, and So it's, well, you should have hidden it more, you should have been more secretive. So this is a very flimsy case. Now the jury has said, well, why we found the mother guilty of this is indirect manslaughter, whatever they call it. Well, the reason we found her guilty is because they, as in the parents, bought the gun and didn't secure it well enough, and they should have known that he was behaving. The son was behaving strangely, and so. But there's a lot of other people involved in this. The school administration, for example. Why aren't they being held accountable? If you want to look for accountability, there's plenty to be shared around here. But they're just going after these working class, very simple, unsophisticated, in some ways rather brutish, actually, in their demeanour, the parents. So could you say, well, gee, they're not very good parents, or they could have been better parents, or they, you say, well, they weren't brought up sort of very well, so we should prosecute the grandparents. Or should we say that the state is accusing straight white males of being evil Nazis, so we should prosecute the state? So anyway, I've got some concerns about the baseline this establishes. Will it be applied evenly to all people? If you accuse a white person, say terrible, horrible things about straight white people, nothing will happen to you. You say the exact same things about a trans or a lesbian or a gay or black, then suddenly you're an evil Nazi, far-right, fascist criminal. But if you say the exact same thing about a white person, then nothing will happen to you. You're not, no one's interested. So is this now a baseline for simply prosecuting the parents of white children or white male children, straight white male children? Because there'd be thousands more cases for prosecuting black parents than there would be for white parents. Every drug lord in downtown, inner city drug lord that is engaged in multiple shootings, you would have thousands, tens of thousands of opportunities in the US to go after black parents, but they don't. They select unsophisticated, lower class, white family. It just doesn't seem to gel with me. So I don't think this is a new baseline at all. I think this is in effect a political, indirectly at least, a political trial. And they're not going after the black, they're not going after the trans, they're not going after the gay, they're not going after the brown. They only wanted a white scalp, and that's how I perceive this. Now, in terms of should the parents have done more, well, yeah, I mean, you could argue that, but let's look at the circumstance. I know as a kid, this is at school, he's one of the very few. This is upmarket middle class school, and there was a small area of government housing in this town, and subsidized housing of some sort. And the parents of this kid who went to the school, they both worked minimum wage jobs, and both of them had to work. So the kid was really unattended from I think the grandparents, some other relative was looking after the two kids before they went to school, but that relative died when they were still in primary school. So from the age of 8 or 9, somewhere around there, they'd been getting themselves up in the morning, getting themselves to school, getting their own breakfast, coming back, getting their own evening meal and all that sort of stuff. So they'd been living that sort of life, not much contact with the parents at all. And the parents, in order to sort of get ahead and so on, also worked on weekends and Saturdays in particular. So Sunday was probably the only day that the whole family could get together. It was very sad, actually, I thought, looking at this. But that the boy, the girl just became sort of a drug addict, slut and everything. But the boy engaged in criminal activity, and I thought I quite liked him, actually, but you could sort of see that distant sadness in his eyes whenever you spoke to him. Even as a kid, I could see that. And he he ended up, going to prison, more for lower level but repeated offences rather than anything super serious. But nonetheless, so you could argue, well, hey, look at those parents. They were poor and they both had to work 50-hour weeks to get by, and so they're at fault. They did it. But I would argue no. They happen to have life circumstances. Say, well, they should have tried harder at school, or they should have had better genetics in terms of mental capacity, or they should have gone to college, or they should have done this, they should have done that, they should have done so and so. But that's all a retrospective. In hindsight, that means you're an armchair sort of saying, well, you should have done this 20 years ago and you didn't, or you shouldn't have done that. That's easy to do, to go look back today and say, well, you should or shouldn't have done this, given how events have unfolded thereafter. But that's a bullshit game. That's a fucking, you can go after anybody on that basis. So I've got some real problems with this. But again, the lining up of what I perceive to be an activist prosecutor and an activist judge. I mean, what sort of lawyers were representing these people? They're not rich, so I assume it was a state, a district defender, public defender, that sort of thing. And I imagine they didn't pick the brightest, smartest, most capable lawyer or law practitioner to do that. So I would assess that their defence was either nobbled in the back room or was incompetent in the first place. So I see this as an ideological trial. I see this as an ideological pursuit of a straight white family for the sole purpose of setting a precedent, but not setting a baseline. Because if that is now the baseline, then you will see tens of thousands, 20,000 plus black parents being sent to prison every year for the crimes that their offspring commit. But we're not going to see that. In fact, I would put money on the fact we might see one or two tokens to make it look good, but we're not going to see that. This is a device to be used against what the state will say, we're just fighting white supremacists, we're fighting Trump voters. It'll be that type of thing. And that, I think, was the background to their motivation for doing this. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.